here today with a video concerning the current climate of college campuses and how students are voicing their opinions. In the past, I think a lot of adults have maligned this generation of millennials as being apathetic, narcissistic, and just too wrapped up in their social medias and blah, blah, blah. And totally unaware of what's going on in the world. It turns out that might be incorrect. It seems as though young college age students are very much aware of what's going on in the world. I think they're very aware culturally. They're voicing concerns about race and gender and sexuality. We've got another election coming up next year. I think students, young people are going to be out and about at the polls, hopefully voting, and, speaking their minds and talking about their opinions as, this country is taking whatever turn it's going to take in the future. So I don't think that the young person today is totally apathetic like we think they are. But the opposite side of that is maybe the current millennial, I guess if you want to call them that, might be a little too oversensitive. Well, I'll give you a few examples. Earlier this year, I guess around the start of the school year in August, the conservative students of Duke University said that they will not be reading that year's Common Read, which I guess all the students, incoming freshmen, need to read the same book and talk about it critically. The book that university chose this year was Funhouse by Alison Bechdel. She's a great writer and great graphic artist, and her book Funhouse is a graphic memoir of her life. And students of the conservative nature said that they were not going to read it because of the graphic sexuality going on in the book. To which my liberal friends and professors on Facebook kind of laughed it off and like, oh, those kids, like, why are we at a university if not to learn? These kids need their safe space. We laughed it off, but it turns out conservative students are not quite the issue. This spans all throughout the political spectrum. I think even our liberal students are becoming hypersensitive and a little too hyper-aware. Being hyper-aware of society and culture is a double-edged sword. It's gotten to the point where we're overusing the phrase trigger warning. We're worried about microaggressions, and microaggressions do exist, but I do wonder, are we crying foul at the wrong time? Are we not picking and choosing our battles correctly? And I'm speaking to you as a former student and as a current university instructor. So hopefully this makes sense. Last month, renowned feminist Germaine Greer was set to speak at Cardiff University. I believe that's in UK. She was set to speak there, but there was an online petition stating that the students did not want her to speak at the Women and Power talk, covering, women in the last 20th century, based on Germaine Greer's comments towards transgender women. She said some insensitive things like, transgender women will never really completely be women. It doesn't matter how much they change their appearance, they'll never essentially be women. I'm not quoting directly, but that's kind of the gist of what she was saying. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with Germaine Greer in that regard, and I think that maybe this topic is a little outside of her wheelhouse. And we do have to remember what generation of feminism she comes from. She's a second wave hardliner who has, some Erica Jong like ideas. Not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, she's still a great thinker and a good writer. But, maybe some of her ideas are a little past their prime. That's fine, whatever. You don't necessarily have to disagree or agree with the speaker that's coming to your school, but you don't have to malign them quite like that. Either you show up to their talk or you don't. And if you show up and you listen to what they say, make sure that you have a lot of well-crafted critical comments to make or questions for the Q&A afterwards. And I'm sure there was going to be a Q&A. I don't think she showed up. I think she was really concerned about her safety. She said, if these students are this vehemently against my speaking, I don't know if I'll feel safe there. I really don't think they would have harmed her, but she was having some apprehension as well. Comedians, Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock, have famously said that they don't do shows at college campuses anymore because they think that this generation of students is a little too sensitive. Nothing is funny anymore. I don't necessarily think that Jerry Seinfeld is funny outside of the sitcom Seinfeld, but, I do have to wonder if that, if he and Chris Rock are onto something. Comedy is a whole other animal, and comedians are able to say things that many of us cannot say under the auspices of satire, mockery. Some things are not off limits, and students on universities can't handle that anymore. Not too long ago, a university English professor, I think, was asked to leave. Well, there was a complaint filed against him by a black student who said the way that this professor was criticizing his grammar and spelling by correcting his papers felt like a microaggression. I mean, come on. I'm not a grammar, Nazi. I don't like to harp on grammar and spelling for students. I feel like that's kind of a skill that you learn over time. And sometimes I'm bad at grammar, even though I am an English instructor. But I do ask that students, if they want to be good writers, they have to know the rules. And you don't necessarily have to be an expert at grammar to be a gifted writer. I mean, there are a lot of genres out there where you can express yourself in any type of dialect, linguistically speaking, that you want. I ask that students learn the rules before they break them. I ask that they understand the enemy before they attack them, or else everything else just looks reactionary and not critical. So, that's something to think about. Are we wasting microaggressions on something so small and insignificant that when we do cry microaggression that it falls on deaf ears? I don't know. The Oklahoma Wesleyan University president came out with a statement, again, not too long ago, saying that his university is not a daycare system. You're here to learn and, leave all of your sensitivity at the door. Which, it sounds harsh, but I do understand where he's coming from. And I do understand where students are coming from. When you have cases like Mizzou in Missouri, where black students feel like they are being oppressed on a daily basis by systematic university, institutions that kind of squelch their freedom to express themselves, or they don't feel safe, where they feel outnumbered and they feel like they're being abused in some type of way, then yeah, I think you've got to get out there, take it to the streets, and call up Black Lives Matter and say, enough is enough. Because the same thing was happening in the 60s. Students were just fed up with the treatment that they were getting if they were on a college campus, mind you, because it was definitely not open and available to everybody. Um, the university system is an implicitly white institution. There's a lot of privilege that goes on in the ivory tower. And so I think we need to be aware of that. Okay, all of that is to say, I understand the students, but I also understand the faculty and some of the administration who are just walking on eggshells and wondering, what do I say? What do I do? Is anything that I say going to, mess up my chances for tenure, or will I get fired? Um, if you don't feel like reading Huck Finn because there are a bunch of instances where the N word is written, I think you need to get over it. You need to understand that Mark Twain was writing at a time where he thought it was a good idea to use the country dialect, and just read it. I mean, it's an okay book. It's not the best, but you do have to understand something about the past in order to complain about the present. You have to, again, know the rules of your enemy before you decide to attack. I think educating yourself is the way to go. Now, I'm sure your professor who's assigning you to read Huck Finn expects you to say, I disagree with this kind of language and I don't care for it. This is when a dialectical happens. You say something about what you disagree about. The professor says, okay, I understand how you feel. Let's talk about the historical context of what was going on at that time. You say, okay, I understand that, but why are we reading this today? And back and forth, back and forth. And hopefully, you supplement that kind of reading with another text from a writer of color at that time. I don't know. That's for you to decide. I don't know. I know that I'm probably going to get some pushback on this from professors who are in the trenches right now, worried about what to put on their syllabus, what to say in class. I get it, because I have those kinds of concerns too. And mind you, I am not tenured. I could go any day just like that if somebody had a gripe against me. But, I'm hoping that I'm not talking to you from an tweed jacket, elbow patches, pipe in the mouth kind of perspective. I'm a former student and I'm a pretty new professor too, so I'm understanding where both parties are coming from. I just do believe that there needs to be a little bit more critical discourse happening in the classroom and I don't know, in the media. I do believe news outlets tend to paint these young people as, ignorant upstarts who don't know what they're saying, so let the old guard have their way. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff going on both sides. I hope that we are thinking about this, critically. If you have any questions or comments, or if you want to disagree with me completely, feel free to, because I'm a big girl and I can handle it. Anyway, have a good night. Bye!